guys, Matt Fay here
Kevin Minavi.
and this is the second podcast in the series. Today we're going to be talking about rackets. So I've brought my college racket along with my current racket that I play with. I'm also going to talk about some demo rackets. And same thing with Kevin. He's going to talk about some rackets that he's interested in playing with and what he currently plays with. So Kevin, why don't you get started? What have you played with in the past, and what do you play with now?
Yeah, so to kind of go back what you said, my former college racket, I would show the audience, but I after I finished tennis, I just was for fun broke them all. So I don't have those, but I have I just have the names of the previous rackets that I've used. And in juniors, I was using like the Prince Graphite. Do you remember that one?
Yeah.
Yeah, it was like the green one. It was the new graphite. It was the green. It had a little I guess horizontal line that went under the I guess
I
the
know which
choke.
one you're talking about. Yeah, it was like a
Yeah,
super low powered racket because
yeah,
Prince had the power scale. I think they were actually numbers, and it was like the lowest one. It was like a 500 or something
yeah.
on their scale.
I mean, I was when I was younger, I was a big dude, so I didn't need power from a racket. So it's what I used for a long time. And then all like I just was in love with Federer, so I used his racket, the Wilson Pro Staff or Pro Staff or
Yeah,
something like that. I didn't use the 90 like him, like a crazy person, because I was two-handed backhand. I used the 95 head, and that one was like from my 15-year-old to about 18. More, and it was very much a counter puncher. I was using the racket was good. It was solid. I couldn't really generate a lot from it though, because when I got older, I thinned out, and then people were just hitting bigger balls than I was. So it wasn't really great for power. It was all around kind of racket, like Federer was. And then in college, I switched to the Bagel Aero Pro Drive GT. And at first, I hated it because every other ball I was hitting, it would slap to the fence, uh, literally. But sure enough, I put some racket weights, some what do they call it? Just
lead
some
tape.
weight. Yeah, lead tape. That's it. Some lead
Yeah,
tape on it and made it a little heavier, and then I was not overhitting it, so then it started going in. And then ever since then, I've been using that racket until, well, not ever since then really, but like after college, I stopped playing for a little bit, but then yeah, that was pretty much the little timetable of the rackets I used in order from when I was playing competitively till end of my college days. So, uh, tell me about your former rackets.
yeah. So I guess my first one ever was probably it was some Wilson racket. I think from like Walmart, a two-piece racket. And then it was
Academy or
terrible.
Walmart. Yeah. Uh huh.
Yeah, I never buy a two-piece racket. I
Mm-hmm.
guess it's okay for beginners, I guess. But um, then I
Yeah,
went
beginner baseball.
into like Prince rackets,
Mm-hmm.
kind of similar to you.
Yeah.
Um, as far as like my junior racket, I don't remember the exact name of it. Then basically the one I remember and what I played with towards the end of high school and college was it's the Prince XO3 kind of Rebel 95. So it's a
Yeah, that
very
was
tight spring pattern.
it was either that or it was the graphite one that I used when I was playing. It was either that or that. So
Yeah, the
I
graphite
know.
one is very similar to this. It's just red.
Mhm.
It's green. It's a
Yeah.
green color. I'm not sure if it's as dense on the string pattern, but this is like a 95 18 by 20.
Mm-hmm.
It's pretty crazy. Gail Monfils played with it way back.
Mm-hmm.
It's I've never really found a racket that plays just like this one. It's a very fast swing rate, and like you talked about with the weight, I had some lead tape up here. I don't know if
Yep.
you can see it, but
Yeah.
I mean, this is obviously a very used racket. I mean, when I was in high school, I would scrape my rackets. I'd break rackets. I probably had 4 or 5 of these total over time. So I had a
Yeah.
lot of them.
Yep. Yep.
Um, so I played with that in college. I've played with several rackets since then, but the one I'm playing with right now, like I mentioned before, is the V Core 95
Mhm.
Yonex.
Mhm.
It's a 16 by 20, not as dense. It's pretty. It's headlight.
Mhm.
Um, Weight's somewhere around like 310. So when you're swinging it, I guess to most people this would be a very heavy racket, I'd say.
Hmm.
To me, I feel like it's a pretty light racket, but it's not, anything crazy. When you put a bunch of lead tape on it, it's got like a huge swing weight. I think the swing weight's pretty low as
Yeah.
far as what most people would play with. Um, yeah, so that's what I'm playing with today. Pretty interesting racket, I guess.
Yeah. No, I remember the Princes. I was really interested in that the yellow one that you showed, but I guess something about also my other my other like kind of hero, or someone I looked up to, was Agassi. So he used the Prince rackets, the old graphites. I think that's what he used, the old graphites when he was playing. So I guess that's one of the reasons why I chose the graphite. And then when you're tired, wanted to use, Federer was also my like number, like top, I guess top two with him and Agassi. So yeah, man, you try to be like your mentor, like not your mentors, but your heroes a little bit. I wish he was my mentor, but no, you try to be like your heroes. You
Yeah,
try. I know. It's like I did wish I had him on speed dial or whatever, but no. But you kind of figure out your game a little bit, and then you kind of take its bits and pieces of every like superstar, and you try to implement your game. But ultimately, the racket does help, but ultimately, the person who drives the racket has the full control. So. Um, yeah, so those are good. Those are good choices. Currently, I'm using the Slinko Whiteout 305. Believe it or not, Slinko has a racket, not just strings. Strings we can talk about another podcast, but which I
yeah,
love Slinko strings. But yeah, this one the head size is about 98, not too big. I like the bigger head because I like a bigger strike zone, and I like a bigger sweet spot because I'm more of a baseliner. So this is a good racket for overall control. It doesn't overhit. Honestly, I don't know why pro players don't use this racket because it's really really good. It's solid. Um, but yeah, no, that's what I'm using right now, and it provides like good control with volleys, good transitioning from my ground strokes to like the ball to net. I feel like some rackets are a little. It's harder to kind of the I guess the when you hit the ball on the strings, that little it kind of bounces off a little bit more with like a Babolat compared to this one. I feel like because Babolat's depending on the string tension, of course, but
yeah.
I think like
The kind of like the ball pocketing attributes of
yeah,
the racket.
yeah.
Yeah,
And so it's a good transitional racket from ground strokes to net and vice versa. So highly, highly recommend Solinko rackets. They are, I mean, they're underrated. I would say they're definitely underrated.
yeah. You're not the first person to recommend, Slinko rackets,
Hmm.
at least from what I've heard in the last year, surprisingly.
Hmm.
So I know they only have like a few rackets in the lineup. They're nowhere near, Wilson and Bob Lab, but I would say most racket um, companies in general now don't have a huge lineup. They just have like three main things, and they have like three or four variations of that line.
Well, yeah, like they make their new like racket. Every pro player, like I remember Federer would switch his rackets from like a Wilson to another Wilson, like the updated version, and then everyone wanted that because he's using it. So they have their in style, or the I guess the popular demand sort of rackets, but then it at the end it kind of fizzles out, and then there's a new racket that comes out. So it's kind of like an iPhone. You just get an iPhone,
Yeah,
and then you get
but
another iPhone.
I
Not
think
as
the thing that
expensive.
people don't realize though, with especially with pros, is like they rarely ever change rackets, and you hear terms like pro stock, and basically pro stock, it's like very tightly coupled, requirements on how they make the mold. It's higher quality control. There's people custom making their grips. It goes very in
It's
depth.
very custom. Yeah, you're right. Like I know that they make their rackets custom made. There was rumors of Federer using his old pro staff, and then they just painted the newer version of it on
I
it
don't
for
think
like
that. Yeah, I don't think they're rumors, but yeah,
yeah, something like yeah, they're true then. But so like it just depends on the person. Some people are very superstitious. They want to keep like Nadal with his bottles, Federer apparently with his racket. They like to keep the same racket since they've been playing. So um, Yeah, it's just marketing. It's a good way to market. They need to update their rackets, and then the pro players need to be technically be using that racket. So in order to increase sales, so it's a good idea, obviously, but it's hard to change a professional tennis player's I guess routine or habits like that. So
Yeah, I
yeah.
mean, when it's the thing you're hitting with, like multiple times in the
Mhm.
game, it's like one of the most.
It is the most important
Yeah,
item that a tennis player can use. Is obviously the racket. Yes, This is
yeah.
with
I
the
mean that and like shoes. I mean, a shirt. I mean, okay, that's not gonna make too much of a difference. I
well,
mean,
you can play barefoot, but you can't play without a racket. If you have shoes. So
yeah.
I think we're getting off topic here, but so yeah, I guess what are your top three future rackets that you want to try? Once you get kind of bored of so the Onyx one to use, yeah.
Yeah, so I have the Yonex V Core. Not really bored of it per se. I think I'm I'm leaning towards staying with the same racket, so I'll get your take on it. But
Hmm.
I think one of the things I don't like about it is when I'm returning,
Hmm.
it feels kind of unstable. Like it goes like left or right. Sometimes
Hmm.
it doesn't feel like a very solid like plow through the ball. So
Hmm.
that'd be something I'd be looking for. I think in terms of the shape, it's kind of an unusual shape.
Hmm.
Like this is a 95, but I feel like it plays more like a 100 inch. Or
It
I
looks
mean,
bigger on camera.
yeah. So I have this one. This is actually a 100 inch. This is a Head Gravity Pro. So this is one
Yeah.
of the rackets I'm interested in. It's 18 by 20. I
Hmm.
just kind of have this fascination with 18 by 20s. I guess it's supposed to give you more feel. I don't know what your take on that is, but you're playing with the 16 by 19. This is a 16 by 20 I'm playing with on
Yeah.
a 95. The Gravity Pro is actually more dense, but you can see like the head size is very similar. I mean, this
Yeah,
is a
it's
95 versus a
interesting.
100.
Hmm. The Onyx has always had a weird shape with their rackets. It's never
Yeah, I
been
think they call
strictly
it
circle,
like
but
a isometric design or something, but basically it like pans out. It stretches out here and it stretches out at the bottom. It's supposed
I
to.
love how they said isometric. And as a PT, isometric for me just means like a muscle contraction without lengthening or shortening. So I don't know what that. I don't know
I
what
don't know what that
isometric
means
means in
either,
that
to
case.
be
Yeah,
honest. The
like an
racket
isometric
technology
contraction.
is, yeah. I feel like the racket technology is becoming more like buzzwordy over the last
Yeah,
like 5 years, where you're just like, oh, like I think one is like, I forget what the technology behind this one is. Auxetic is the technology they call it, but it's all around like vibration
I don't even know
technology.
that's
I
a word.
remember Babolat back in the day had the I forget what it was called, but they all had that thing like right here on the racket. Is you were playing with the Aero Pro, they had like this vibration thing that was put in here, and they had
Yeah,
some
yeah, yeah.
buzzword
Right.
around it. I forget what it was called, but
Hmm. Hmm. I think
very
I
similar.
remember, but yeah, it's escaping my mind right now. Um, yeah, those are good choices. I think you should definitely try that one. I think for returns, the bigger sweet spot would be better if you want to, especially you want to be aggressive.
Yeah, I think the main ones I'm switching is like I'm considering is the Head Gravity Pro, which has a higher swing rate than what I'm used to.
Hmm.
The one that everyone has, I'm thinking about the Blade V8 18 by 20, maybe the Blade
Wilson
Pro.
blade.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So like
Hmm.
this one, I hit with it a little bit the other day. Honestly, like the specs say it's like similar weight to what I'm playing with. It's like 305 versus the 310, I think. But this felt like a very light racket to me, in my opinion. Like it unexpectedly light compared to what I'm used to hitting with.
Yeah.
Feels very maneuverable. So does the V Core. I mean,
Mhm.
all three of them I'd say are very maneuverable rackets, which is something I look for. But I don't know. Definitely got to hit some more. I got to hit with a person. I was only hitting with the ball machine, but any kind of thoughts on I guess these three rackets?
Um. So you got all right. So you got the Onyx. You have the Wilson Pro Drive. And you have the Head. What was it? Head what?
Head Gravity Pro.
Head Gravity Pro. That was the Head Gravity Pro and the Head Speed are the ones I wanted to try. So we can definitely mess with that if you want to.
Yeah.
But it depends on what you're looking for. I feel like Yonex, I've always known Yonex is like pretty good. Yonex and Head really are like, I don't know if this is true, and I hope whoever views this video, they can comment. I feel like Yonex and Head and really Babelot are like more ground stroke rackets. Like they're meant for more ground strokes.
Yeah.
They got a cleaner sweet spot. I feel like the Wilson rackets are, like I said, more all around. They don't feel as smooth when you swing. Personally, for me, like I don't feel as smooth. They're solid racket. Like you can get, you feel everything feels solid. But I feel like with like the former three that I just mentioned, the it's a little more cleaner when you make contact point with the ball. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I've actually tried the not the current pro staff, but the one like last year. I tried that, and like you said, I feel like it's definitely it doesn't feel smooth. It feels like solid when you hit
Yeah.
it. And I tried the RF one actually. I felt like the RF was a very heavy racket compared to everything else I've ever hit with. I mean, I've tried like the Rafa one, and I would
Mm-hmm.
agree that's a heavy racket as
Yeah.
well. Which
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. No, those are good choices. It just depends on what feels best for the player. I could be totally wrong. I think I can. Someone could just mention, "Hey, I'm a aggressive baseliner and I hit clean on the and I use a Wilson Pro staff." I'm like, great. If that's what feels good for you, do it, please. And whatever makes you feel comfortable on the court to compete at your best. So, um, yeah, if people want to comment on these, this would be great to get a good discussion going.
yeah, I
Um,
think what a lot of people would ask or what they think about is like, how do I go about picking the racket? I guess like there's a lot of options. So I can say, if you want to go try a racket, you can, go to your local shop. There's places online I won't mention, but there's big brand, tennis retailers that you can literally pay like $15 and they'll ship you 3 rackets and you can try
yeah,
them out.
yeah,
I mean, it's pretty cheap to try rackets. To buy a racket is obviously
a
expensive.
little more different.
The newer ones are all, I'd say, upwards of 250 at this
Yeah,
point.
yeah.
So, in your opinion, like if you had to make a list of like top 5 things you're thinking about, is this racket right for me? How would you make that decision?
So I would say the weight would be weight in order. I'll go like in this. If I had to choose, weight would be number one because I can modify the. I would rather start off with a lighter weight. That way, I can add more lead tape and make
Yeah.
it heavier if needed. Right. So just don't go if you're young and you're trying to check out a racket. Don't go straight heavy. Go a little lighter. See how it feels. You know, mess with the tension of your strings a little bit, which would be probably number three. Number two would be the head size for me. Um, the head size for me, I like the bigger head, not too big. I think 100 is perfect for me. 98 to 100 would be perfect. Some people would disagree, but that's fine. It's whatever feels comfort for you. um, I know that this is not really related, but strings do matter because you're hitting ball with the strings attached to the racket. So string tension, string type matters as well. I would say number four would probably be maybe the length. There's not much of it. I don't personally see that much of a difference with 16 by 19, 18 by 20. Just when it gets to those little things, it just depends on the feel. And then I guess the last one would be grip size. The grip size is for me, it would be I like the smaller one because my hands get tired. I don't know why, but my hands get tired when I'm because I play in the back, so it's very I change and I'm contacting and I'm going through and I like a little bit of a smaller grip size. So for me, yeah, that'll be order from it'll be weight to head size to strings and string tension to length to grip size. That'll be my top five. What would be yours?
Um, I think the only major point I disagreed with was the actual string pattern. To me,
Mhm.
I don't know if it's anything backed on evidence, but mainly for like feel and playing with rackets, I think the string density does make a huge difference in terms of like what you feel and what you hit.
Yeah.
Definitely, like if I would say if you got an 18 by 20 racket and you go out there and string it to like 72 or something, that's gonna be like probably the most uncomfortable
Well,
experience
yeah,
you could
like
ever
there
have.
are extremes, of course. Like anyone's, no one.
I'm not saying just in
Yeah,
But I'm saying, like, also on that same spectrum, if you take like an 1820 and you go string it to like 42, that
Hmm.
feel and that spin you're gonna get is gonna be crazy compared to
Oh,
like,
for sure.
like a
We
16
should
by
do that.
19, and it's like, even like 52, I'd say it's gonna be drastically different on the same racket.
Yeah,
Because
I
there's
agree.
some, rackets have like different, string patterns. So like
Yeah.
you have to decide kind of what string pattern you want. The one that I don't have that I'm interested in looking at that comes out later this month, I believe on the 25th, is the Pure Strike 2024, and it's a new one they've never came out with, but it's a 100 square inch, and it's a 16 by 20, and
Oh, okay.
it's basically the same like swing weight, the same weight as my V Core. So kind
Hmm.
of interested in that because I played with the 100 Pure Strike for a couple seasons, which is kind of
Hmm.
an unusual racket.
Hmm.
But going back to the question, I think my first one would probably be string pattern. Definitely head size. Traditionally, I probably have done most of my career with 95, I would say. Um, I do want to probably go to like 98 or 100.
Well, you're a
I've played with,
two-hander now, so you used to play one-hander, so that made more sense. But two-hander, I feel like you need a bigger head size, just personally.
yeah, I think so because of the motion itself. I think
Yeah.
that makes sense to have a bigger racket because I do feel like when I'm like swinging through, if I swing like up faster, for
Hmm.
example, I feel like I run out of, racket size essentially. Like it
Yeah, the
will
more
frame it
time the
quicker.
ball's on your strings, the more I feel like the more depth, the more spin you can get. So yeah, even if it's like this much of a difference, it does matter, and whatever if it goes in or out. So
Yeah, I think for me too, like with playing with 95s, know it's 100% harder to play with other rackets, but it's like I notice if I don't play like for like a couple weeks or something, then I go and play. There's definitely a longer period of me like warming up with a 95 versus a 100.
yeah,
Where I'm like, all right, I gotta kind of get back to the feeling of the sweet spot. It's more challenging to get into it versus like, okay, I just pick up a 100 and like it's easier to start hitting again.
yeah,
So I'd
valid.
say that. I think weight would probably be my fourth one. I'm not very sensitive to weight in terms of rackets because
Hmm.
probably because I'm 6'3" and lengthy, so it's
Yeah.
like not really that big of a deal to like move the racket around.
Hmm.
But
That makes
yeah, I mean
sense.
those would be kind of my decision criteria.
Yeah,
Without getting into the strings, I think strings are a whole nother thing.
they are, and I just for me, I just have to lump them in a little bit because the tension matters. Like you mentioned, like 18 by 20, putting it at 70 pounds would be crazy. So I think with regards to how a racket feels, you have to be able to put a tension that you are comfortable with, which can accentuate the benefit, like how the racket feels. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah. Um, so I guess the future rackets. You said those are the rackets you were wanting to try. Like I told you, the head speed is one I want to try as well. The new Babylon Aero Pro Drive because I played it with Babylon, I always loved it. The new one, I would love to try that. And then last one, it would be the Yonex. I think it's like the the V Score 100. If you know what I'm talking about.
Oh, V Core 100.
V Core, yeah, sorry, V Core
Okay.
100. I would
Yeah, I've
love to
tried that
try
one.
that one. Hmm. I just I feel like I don't know like when I think of Yonex, I think of David Nalbandian, and for the younger viewers, that guy was just had the nastiest backhand, and then it just looked so clean with that Yonex, and that's just what I think of. So I mean, hopefully, I feel like I have a pretty good backhand, but I mean, his is just god tier. So I would want to try his racket, or not his, but like the Yonex, and just see how that feels with my backhand. So
Yeah, I think ever since like Prince kind of did its thing and kind of dissipated and became no longer, dominant on the tennis field, I think Yonex and Head are probably the closest to what the Prince rackets used to be like.
yeah, Prince has really died down. I haven't really noticed them, and hopefully there are no reps from Prince that watch this. But I'm just sorry. I apologize. It just the Princes have not been as I guess apparent with the general population as it used to be. So
Yeah,
yeah,
but yeah, I think most people play with the E zone. Yonex. I think Yonex is a really good brand though, very high quality. Like usually
Hmm.
when you buy two of them, they're not drastically out of
No,
spec,
no, not at
compared
all.
to like something like a Wilson or something or a Babylot.
Hmm.
Sometimes you buy two of those from the same rack and it's like drastically different in terms of
Yeah,
weight.
yeah, that is true. You have to figure out what's best for you. Rackets do matter. The 18, the size, grip size, the weight, they all matter. But it ultimately is what feels good for the person.
Yeah, you
Yeah.
mentioned grip size. You like to
Uh-huh.
play smaller, so I got on mine. I play with a grip 2 or a 4 by 1/4,
Yeah.
which I think is small for guys
Yeah.
as far as like what they're playing with. Most people play with like 3 or 4 or something like that,
Yeah.
like a 3/8.
Hmm. I do play with the. I think it says it right here. The one you said. The 1/4.
Yeah, that's the one I like. I've
Yeah.
noticed like some people even play with like 5/8, which is like I couldn't really fathom that
No.
playing with that. It probably just hurt my hand, to be honest. But I don't know. I've
Yeah.
always played with 4 and 1/4, and I haven't had an issue. Think I tried 3/8 one time, and I felt like it just kind of hurt my hand.
Yeah. That matters too. I mean, the grip size matters. You're gonna, as a PT, you're gonna be repetitively what we call pronating and supinating your hand back and forth. So you got to make sure that it's nothing too strenuous on your hands and your forearms. So, yep, that's a it depends. Like I said, someone else may like that 3/8 or that 5/8, and it feels good for them, and their hand doesn't hurt them. But like you just said, if you use that, it can start. You feel like it would hurt your hand. So I would advise just remaining where you are and where it was comfortable for you.
Yeah, let me ask you about racket customization because I think some people want to know about that. And for people that don't know, you can open up the bottom. You can
Hmm.
put, like metal balls. You can put silicone, which is the more
Hmm.
popular thing in it.
Hmm.
A lot of people use lead tape, copper tape, and there's different, densities to the tapes. So if you're ever purchasing one of those, you definitely want to read it, and you definitely want to have a scale when you're doing that.
Yeah.
There's machines that will measure the balance of the
Hmm.
racket. That's obviously a factor. A lot of people do the weight, the balance, where they're putting the weight if it's and they'll measure the swing weight. There's basically like iPhone apps now, and you
Hmm.
basically buy this machine and you kind of move it back and forth, and it can measure the swing weight now.
Hmm.
I'm not sure how accurate those are, but with all
Yeah.
that being said, do you think customizing a racket is worth it? And like, when should someone customize their racket?
No, it's not. It's not worth it. It's a lot of money for maybe like a couple more percent of improvement, but you can always just improve upon just working on your game. It's not worth it. Now, if when you go pro and you're top 100 in the world or whatever, sure, because you're looking for that competitive edge. That you know, like I said, I've told you before the top 100 players in the world, more like the top 250 players in the world, all play relatively about the same. Of course, with there's differences with the mental game like Djokovic, but who's very strong. But um, it's not worth it for like the average 4.550 player, even college player. It's not worth it because you're going to go through a lot of customization for not a guarantee. You're not going to like win every match. Does that make sense? So
Yeah.
why go through all the trouble of trying to modify your racket when you can just continue working on your game and working on your weaknesses? Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think it makes sense. I think there's like some people that switch rackets frequently, they change equipment frequently. I think it's hard
No,
not to
you
do
got to
that.
keep it, man. You got to keep like it's never gonna feel good all the time, and you got to
Yeah.
kind of weather the storm. But you got to be overall satisfied with what the racket you have, the strings, grip. You got to be satisfied with that. That's number one. If you are satisfied, great. But if you're having like a couple days, even like a month of bad tennis, you shouldn't just be like, oh, I got to switch. A
Yeah.
Yeah, like you can't. That's just expensive, man.
Time
Tennis
to
is
get a new
one of the most.
racket.
Yeah, new racket, new strings, new coach, new bags, new style, new haircut, everything. No, you don't need to do that. You just build. You have to weather the storm. That's what tennis is. It's you versus you, along with you competing against someone else. So you got to just kind of weather the storm with those bad days and not blame it on your racket because it's not your racket. It's definitely you. it's
So for those people out there that are, frequent racket switchers, when would you say, you should stay with the racket and not switch?
like you're asking like when you should stay and not
Yeah,
switch.
like, those people that
Huh.
are like, "Oh, I'm gonna switch rackets," like, when should you just when do "Hey, I should just stay with this racket and keep improving my game," like you said?
If you all right, if you've had general good results with with tournaments, of course, yes, like keep it. It's honestly like a feel thing. If you are no longer happy with the racket and you feel like it is, you try another racket just for fun and it feels so much better. Give it a couple more weeks, even a month before you switch because things can change. Your feel can change. Every day is a different day when you play when you step out on the tennis court.
Yeah.
So you have to. I mean, if you generally, like I said, if you generally feel well with the racket, like you feel like you can hit all the shots you want, you can highlight your strengths, you can minimize your weaknesses, whatever, then stick with the racket. Maybe try adjusting the strings first, maybe the tension of the strings. Don't switch anything. Don't just completely revamp everything. So just
Yeah.
go like let's just say you're at 58, tension. Go to 54. Try it. Maybe a looser tension would be better for more topspin. Whatever. Play around with the tension. If you're still not finding results, start small, then expand big. Don't just take everything out and put a new one in. Does that make sense? So I guess that would be my advice. Start off small, change the tension, then maybe play around with different strings, then maybe play around with like the weight of the racket. Like I said earlier in the show, my Babolat when I first started, I was hitting the fence. That doesn't mean I should just give up on the Babolat and go to another racket. Adjust. I put some weights on it, and it felt way better, 100 times better, and I'm able to kind of hit out on the shot and not fly to the fence. So that would be my advice.
Okay. Alright, well, previously you're like, "Oh, don't customize the racket," but now you're saying
Well, no. Like customization was like what I think with like Federer, who's like you got the exact weight that you want. Like it's customized for you. Like when I think of customization, I think of like you're directly going to like Wilson, Babolat, whatever, and they are making the racket for you. Like when like Federer did, right?
yeah, like pro stock type stuff.
Pro stock, exactly.
Yeah.
That's what I think of customization. With this, what I was just explaining, maybe I didn't understand the first time, but yeah, you can customize the way you want it to, but start out small and go, like change the tension, the racket weight, the strings if it needs to be that, maybe the grip size, add another grip to it, play around with it. So whatever. Then, if you feel something that feels comfortable for you, you may not play the best every time, but it feels comfortable. Then stick with it.
Yeah, so when people go and want to add weight to their racket, there's several different places. You can start
Hmm.
putting it, at the head. A lot of people refer to it by positions on an analog clock, the 2 and 10.
Yeah.
Rarely I see people put weight towards the bottom. That's pretty
Yeah.
rare. But for people, I guess, like I was talking about, like stability,
Hmm.
I know swing weight, you'd be adding weight to the top. If you want
Hmm.
some stability, I've heard, put weight on the sides. And then,
Hmm.
I guess I really don't know why. I guess generally when you want to counter, you put weight in the bottom when you've already added a bunch of weight on the top. Unless your racket comes head heavy and you want it to be head light, then you just put silicone in it to already balance the default. But
Yeah,
I don't know. I feel like when you get into that, it's quite a process. Like it's hard to.
for
Uh,
sure. Yeah, and that's what I'm saying. That's a small detail that you're going to be adding or reducing, and then that's already a big change. So to the viewers, don't just switch rackets completely. Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense. I think there's definitely players that hit more with body weight and their shots feel heavier versus
Hmm.
players that use their arm more and it feels like a very like weak spinny shot maybe.
Yeah, and that's the thing too. I feel like most players should be hitting with their body weight and stepping in with the shot and putting force through that instead of just relying on your arms because A, your arm is smaller than your body. B, which means that it will get tired quicker. C, your body weight generally doesn't change throughout a whole match. Maybe water weight, but it's like within 5 pounds. So you're putting consistently the same amount of body weight into the shot, which builds consistency that way. So the things you can control, obviously your body, like, but you can control the the stepping in that you can do. Like when you try to step into a shot, you can control how much transfer you can do, right? Transfer from your back foot to your front foot whenever you're stepping into the shot. So um, I think yeah, if you're able to kind of put body weight into the shot, it should automatically be heavier. But then if you add weights to the racket and you have good acceleration, that just builds more onto it, in my opinion.
You guys, thank you guys for tuning into our second podcast ever. We're still continuing to grow and iterate through it. This is Matt Fay, and I'm here with
Kevin Manavi, we're signing out. Take care.